the bottom of the lake, the top of the caldera, will fracture, and there will be water flow down into the fissures, and it will be hot, and it'll get hot overnight, so hot that it'll boil your feet if you're walking on the shores or in the water of Taupo. And that's just before the whole thing collapses, and that huge amount of water in Lake Taupo drops down into a magma bed. And that will cause a tremendous steam explosion eruption when it happens. And it'll throw boulders the size of cars clear up, toward Rotorua and up into the northern parts of North Island. Now, there have been a number of other people with dream visions of the same thing in New Zealand over the years since I first made the announcement, seeing the same thing. The last time that it erupted fully in 180 to 187 AD, it created a blanket of ash around the entire planet. And understand, New Zealand's in the southern hemisphere. It created an ash blanket that the Chinese astronomers in the northern hemisphere recorded as 3 days of darkness from the ash fall from it. It is huge. So is it going to affect Australia? Yeah. The eastern side of Australia may well get a tsunami or several waves in that tsunami period from the eruption. And a lot of the North Island, New Zealand, is just going to be devastated. We're advising people that are watching this who live there to move, if there's any warning of this, like the Maori woman said, to move up into that peninsula which juts up toward the equator for safety, and to the highest ground you can get there during the time of the tsunami-type waves that will be occurring after the eruption. There are just so many attendant problems with something like that it's hard to tell people the safe place, but there are places that are less likely to wipe you out. So yes, Australia will be bothered, South America will be bothered, North America will be bothered, all of Europe, China, Russia, everybody will get their share of it when that one goes. And, between that and Yellowstone, we've got two big problems sitting there.
Thanks, Stan. Definitely the Great Dividing Range is probably the place to be. Lolly, you have a question for Stan?
Yes. Hi, Stan. I'm
Hi.
Canadian. And I'd like to know, in addition to a potential catastrophic release of the Juan de Fuca plate on the west coast, can you tell us anything regarding possibilities for major earth movements in Canada? And also, could you comment on how a major event in the New Madrid area might destabilize or otherwise affect the eastern part of Canada?
Well, Lolly, look, I must apologize. I haven't studied Canada as much as you should have in relation to the earthquakes, because in the past, the way I forecast quakes was looking at coastal boundaries to water and temperature changes there that would reflect an imminent seismic release. So I can't tell you what it would do on the east coast of Canada, or other than the damage that would come into the Vancouver area from the quake itself along the Cascades and from the tidal wave. I can't tell you much more than that. I'm sorry.
That's fine, thanks. Well, I'm snuggled up here next to the Rocky Mountains in the foothills, and so Cliff has written that he believes the significant mountain-forming period of Earth's expansion has concluded, and that we're more likely to continue to see rifts and sinkholes as Earth grows going forward from Neil Adams' expansion model. Does your model or data suggest that we still may see significant upthrust events, mountain forming? And if so, what would account for that at this point?
I think, I've talked to Neil Adams and a number of others, and also researched work like for H.G. Owen's work on the Atlas of Continental Expansion. I think I agree that the mountain building processes are pretty much finished at this point, and that what we're going to see is stretching of the thinner parts, which is under oceans or in ocean borders to existing tectonic plates. Where you get those mountain building processes is where these land masses that are above water collide. And in the North Atlantic, right on down into the southern part of the Atlantic, you have that ridge there. But I think that was a kind of an aftermath of the last major expansion period, and there was kind of magma build up there over a period of time, which did build those. But as far as catastrophic things, I think we're going to see that the lower elevations will receive pulls or stretches and rips or tears as opposed to collisions to build mountains.
Thanks very much, Stan.
Mm-hmm.
Ground Rock, you had a question for Stan?
Yeah, hi, Stan. Forgive my voice, just getting over a cold here.
Hey, let me tell you what, Ground Rod, I've been about 8 days with this stupid flu, and I'm sitting here with lemon and honey and trying to keep my voice working, too, so I sympathize.
Well, thank you. I wish I'd made my questions shorter. Here we go. Stan, we here on the forum monitor and share what solar data we're able to gather from a multitude of sources. Many of us experienced surprise and amazement at the March 9th X-class flare happened, as it happened. The second in only a month, and then to reach a level that didn't exist before 2000. However, this particular flare, unlike the one in February, had a substantial proton event component, and a strong associated geomagnetic storm ensued. Just as the Earth was experiencing a strong pull southward, the geomagnetometer was fighting its way back northward when the horror of what has become known as the Japanese 9-point earthquake hit. Perhaps from reading too much of your work and what little is known publicly about T.T. Brown's anti-gravitic research, what seemed to be happening while watching the 10 megaelectron-volt proton levels was a perfect example of a sawtooth-shaped waveform, similar to the pulse DC component needed to charge an asymmetrical capacitor and produce an anti-gravitic response. Can you confirm or dismiss any of these wild-eyed speculations? Perhaps share with us some of your solar observations at the time and their interpretation. Thank you.
All right, Ground Rod. Good that you got through that without kind of losing your voice entirely. Look, I've been working for probably 6 to 7 months on a new paper, part 2 of my series on gravity, electricity, and magnetism, the real nature of it in terms of inertia or Newtonian mechanics rather than the relativistic equations. What I have found is there are 2 types of gravity, and NASA has confirmed this in that it was Pioneer 10 and 11, which were going to the outer reaches, or at the outer reaches of our solar system, out around 75 AUs from the sun. These 2 probes started to pull back as though some weaker force they hadn't predicted was pulling them back toward the sun. Now, my new model for gravity does support the fact that atoms will line up and that their spins will, in the fluid of space, either space, will create a low pressure zone, which we normally call gravity, or the gravitational constant of a planet. But those atoms, all of our atoms on the Earth and in any other planet or star or galaxy, all of these spinning things that are gathered together to form a sphere or a flattened spheroid or a disk, all of these things are organized by a weaker but larger field that spins them into the center of the whole operation. It's like if you take a glass of water that you can, clear glass of water, and you can put some fine iron filings in it and some fine sand grains in it with water and stir the glass up. Initially, there will be a chaos, a maelstrom of all these particles and water spinning around. Now, the water is going to be like the invisible ether space, that fine structure that I believe is like a fluid that permeates all of the universe that we can detect at the moment. The sand and the iron filings are like different types of matter, different densities. And if you'll stir that and let it settle down, you'll see in the middle of that glass at the bottom, first the iron filings form a little teepee or cone shape, and then on top of that come the lighter, less dense sand grains, and they form this kind of conic shape down there. Now, they have their own gravitational force from the atoms in the sand and the iron filings, but there is a weaker force which lines them up. And understand, atoms, when they spin, and they all spin, they spin at better than 50 million times a second. And if you can imagine a gyroscope spinning at 50 million RPS, you're looking at something that's mighty and doesn't want to change its axis of rotation easily. So it is organized by this much greater spinning field. Like if you're looking at a galaxy, at the center of it, things seem to be flowing into that center but not going anywhere. In essence, they are. It's a folded sphere with voids inside of it, and in the very center of a galaxy, it's a supermassive black hole, which is not exactly spherical, but it's more like a donut or an oblique spheroid. But all of these things indicate that gravity has two components: the containment or organizing field, that weaker one, and then the sum of all the atoms within that. Now, our sun has the equivalent in our solar system. It has the organizing field which forms the orbits of the planets, and then the sun itself has its own atoms, all lined up. All their spin axes are lined up in a particular direction toward the center of the sun. When you upset this balance, whether magnetically or electrostatically or by magnetic ropes flipping in the sun, it sends shock waves out that you don't even see throughout the organizing or containment field throughout the entire solar system. So I am concerned, certainly, that this will affect Earth's gravity and also the stability of the gravity of all the planets, probably as far as the Kuiper Belt, at around, what is that, around 45, I think, or where did it start? 45 to 50 AUs, I think, out there, something like that. So the anti-gravity type potential you're talking about, basically I look at not as anti-gravity, but a disturbance in the organizing field, which may even cause our atoms here on the Earth, everything, to deviate from a normal, stable position with their spin axes perpendicular to the surface of the Earth, inside and out. Gravity, as we describe it now, does, I'm pretty sure, invert or reverse. If you drill down in the Earth toward the center, it will, a few hundred miles down, it will invert and be backwards, negative up toward the surface. There will be a void, and then another positive gravitational thing down near the core. But this is something that I'll explain later in my paper. And in fact, actually, if you can go to my website there, to standeyo.com, for today's forum, I've got a thing that says Show Images. And if you click on that, it'll give you some pictures that I've taken out of the paper I'm writing, which show the containment field and what I'm talking about and how it does affect gravity and the particles that are in that gravitational field, and hence the gravity of a planet or moon or star or galaxy, whatever. And I've also got links to Neil Adams' site there, too, because I really think his illustrations or his animations of real data do show what we're talking about, the expansion and catastrophic expansion of planets and stars. Did I get off track, or did I get all that?
No, thank you, Stan. Neil Adams sure does have something that gives one pause. Thank you.
Thanks, Granrod. Stan, staying on to the sun, as you are aware, the Hopi have a prophecy of the end of the fourth world destroyed by a purge of fire. Many of us are very familiar with your years of work on the Hopi and the map you drew of the US of A. If we are indeed in the Earth Changes period, is there anything else you have not yet said on air that the Hopi elders have told you secretly about the end of the fourth world? Perhaps now is a good time to state it.
No, I think I have imparted everything that they gave to us. Certainly a lot of what they're talking about as far as the fire from the sun scorching the earth is in biblical prophecy in the book of Revelation. So I believe that's the important issue, is that there will be some kind of a solar event that will cook the surface of the planet, probably the side of the planet that's facing the sun when it hits. I don't know whether it'll be a proton event as opposed to an electromagnetic event, but if our ozone layer is weakened, if our magnetic field weakens on the planet,